Hello, everyone, and welcome to this episode about talking about how to be a better speaker, connecting with your audience. Now, this is something that we all aim to achieve, isn't it? Because we all have a very precious message to share, and that's why we're getting on stage. And by stage, let me rewind, it can be a one-on-one conversation with somebody, it can be a podcast, it can be a networking meeting, it can be a virtual stage, it can be a live stage. Those are all stages. But whenever you open your mouth with intention, you have a stage. How do you connect with the audience? Right. Few things you need to bear in mind, because connection is what we're all about, isn't it? I've got an important message to share in my head. I want to speak it out. I would love you to pick it up. This is what I'm putting down. So, first question, who is your audience? Are you very clear on that? Because we have 3 levels that we're going to connect with people: head, heart, and voice. Head connection. Who is your audience? Because knowing that is critical to the words you are going to use. I'm here in Mexico at the moment. If I speak English or even out of Mongolian, it's not going to get the message across, is it? I need to speak Spanish. Who is your audience? That's a very extreme example. Let me give you a more down-to-earth one. If your audience are high school students, are you going to use language that is that technical that it requires a PhD to be able to understand it? No, you're not, are you? So watch your language. Who is it aimed at? You may have a brilliant vocabulary, but if the people you're speaking to don't fully understand what you're saying and feel as though you're talking up here and I'm down here, feels like you're talking down to me, and nobody wants to be in that position. Now, I'm not saying dumb down what you're saying. What I am saying is know your audience. If you know that you are speaking to PhD candidates and that sort of level of intellect, then speak your highfalutin language. If you're not, can I suggest that you bring it down a notch or two and use regularly used words? On that front, beware of cultural references. We all have in our minds those little anecdotes, those little things that we grew up with, and it may not be in the experience of your audience. They could be common phrases that you use in your home area that are not common across the world. Now, this is a very clear one for me because I have lived in the UK. I grew up in the UK. I'm steeped in English and Scottish language in terms of the cultural experience. Now, I tend to pull on things like that and realize that if I'm in Australia, if I'm in Asia, if I'm speaking to a North American, i.e. American or Canadian audience, then those are not common experiences. Classic example of that, I talk about things being belt and braces, and I get a what look. That's where you have double insurance. Braces in the UK are what is known as suspenders in North America. It's a way of holding your pants up, or trousers in the UK. A belt, I think we all have the same belt, but the point is it's double insurance. Your pants, your trousers are not going to fall down. That's a quick example of something that regularly rolls off my tongue and I have to go, hang on, not going to work. Cultural references, the level of language in terms of the intellect, the jargon you're using, please scrap the jargon. Always use basic information, basic words, because you can then introduce your topic in a way that's going to make sense. You can use an example of a metaphor, a story. I gave you one to start with. If you're in Mexico, you're not going to be speaking out of Mongolian. You're going to be speaking Spanish. You get the idea? Who is your audience? Be very clear on that because you are speaking to them. Make sure that the intellectual bit, the head connection is there. What is logical sense in your head may not appear to be logical sense in their head. That's where the power of your language comes in. Can you make it a clear picture in their head using experiences that they have to make it make sense? Head connection. That's where we tend to focus. Does it make sense? Let me into a secret. Let me let you into a secret. If you didn't already know this, this is where the real connection happens, in your heart. That's where you want to really connect with your audience. And that's where you're going to be using emotionally rich language, sensorily rich language. When you're explaining something, draw your audience into the scenario that you are telling them about. I'm working with an author at the moment who is telling the story of when she was hit by as a child by a car. And she was talking about the smell of the rubber screeching to a halt as the tires on the ground, the sun reflecting on her little Crocs, her little shoes, as she went flying up into the air, having been hit by this car, and the sound of her skull hitting the tarmac, the crack that it made, and then the screams of people because they could see what was about to happen, and that slow-mo movement. All of this sensorily rich language that draws you into this scene. And you're left thinking, oh my goodness, that must have been an awful situation. That's a real heart connection. And I can tell you, when I read her story, I was doing all the goosey things because it really connected with my heart. Now, we all know the power of storytelling when it comes to getting your message across. So remember this. Number one, know your audience. Who are you speaking to? So you know where to gauge the language. Secondly, and probably even more importantly, before you get as far as the who, what is it? Why are you speaking this message? What is your big intention? Why are you saying this in the first place? What's your purpose? When you know your purpose, you know your why, you know your who, you know your people, and you really connect with their heart because of this emotionally rich language, this sensorily rich language. Draw people in as you're telling your story. That way, they're with you. They're putting themselves in the scene. At that point, they're not necessarily listening to your words. Well, they are, but they're in their mind, they're in that scene. That is the most powerful way that you can connect head and heart, your head and heart, with your audience. Now, I'm very passionate about this, and you can hear that in my voice. And that's the key here, because if your head and heart are aligned up, what you're saying to yourself in here is matching what you're saying out here, because your heart is in it and you truly believe it. It will show in the clarity of your voice. There will be that little edge to your voice that is, yes, totally in alignment. That passion, that power will come out in your voice. Now, yes, there are things that you require to do for good delivery, your breathing, your posture, and various other elements in terms of the actual delivery, the performance of it. But can you see how this is really important? Connecting with your audience, really getting that head and heart together. If your head and heart are together, it will beautifully flow in your voice. But I tell you what, if they're a little off, if you don't truly believe what you're saying in your head, there will be a disconnect and your voice will have a little catch in it. Can you hear the little difference already? Now I've put that on so you can hear the difference. There will be micro movements in your nonverbals, particularly in your head and maybe in your hands as well, that will indicate that you don't fully believe what you're saying. There could be tiny little micro movements of your head shaking and going, no, 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 no. That's what I saw with a client who put out a social advertising, a video advertising what she was doing at a workshop. And I asked her, did she have any traction on it? And she came back and went, nope, not a peak. Nobody connected with her over it at all. And it wasn't simply the algorithm. Because I asked her, did you truly believe, fully engaged in what you were saying? And she was taken aback to start with and went, or maybe not. I said, yeah, go back and have a look at that video. You will see there were tiny little shakes of your head all the way through. Now, I picked it up because that's one of my skills. But the audience looking at that would have gone, she's saying, no, 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 no. I'm exaggerating. Her movements literally were micro, tiny little shakes of her head. But the audience watching it would have picked up that that was her saying no. Imperceptible, maybe, other than to the trained eye. But the heart connection with her audience was lost. They didn't believe her. They didn't take her up on it because her head and her heart weren't fully aligned. So can you see how important this is for you to connect your head and heart first and foremost, get them aligned, and then you will have such amazing impact with your audience as you're using that wonderfully rich language. And yes, it takes practice. We're going to come on to a bit more practice next week, the importance of practice and the importance of being able to know your topic so that if somebody says to you very quickly, can you talk about such and such? Yeah, okay. They know that you're a speaker. You know that classic, is there a doctor in the house? Well, sometimes, is there a speaker in the house because somebody's let an event manager down, or somebody's feeling nervous, or any number of situations where it is known that you can speak. Have your material ready. That's something for next week. Let's just give you a little taster of what's to come next week. Now, next week won't be live at this time because I will be on an aeroplane heading my way to Dallas on my way back to Malaysia. So it will be a pre-recorded one and it will go up. It'll go up at the same time, but it won't actually be a live session. So recapping from today, get your head and heart connected. And if there's a little disconnect with your head, go back and check out the rewire process that I've spoken about, starting before Christmas and ending just after the new year. That will really help you out on that one. Get your head and heart aligned. Your voice will be beautifully resonant then. And make sure that that language that you're using, one, is aimed at the audience because you know who they are. And secondly, you're using that language that is so rich and inviting because you're setting that scene so clearly. That's what I got for you this week. Have an awesome week. Do let me know how you're going with this. What has been your biggest takeaway? What have been those light bulb aha moments? And I will see you live in 2 weeks. But as I said, next week, you'll have a pre-recorded one. Bye from me.